Oh, I'm sorry. Hari Om. Let's start with the prayer. Om Samasta Jana Kalyane Niratam Karunamayam Namami Chinmayam Devam Sadgurum Brahma Vidvaram Vasudeva Sutam Devam Kamsachanora Mardanam Devaki Paramanandam Krishnam Vande Jagadgurum Tvameva Mata Cha Pita Tvameva Tvameva Bandhusya Sakha Tvameva Tvameva Vidya Dravidam Tvameva Tvameva Sarvam Amadeva Deva Tvameva Sarvam Gurudeva Deva. Hari Om. We are looking at the Panchadashi 6th chapter, trying to complete and finish do some gaps, that is from 58 to 74. There's a gap in the talk series that are available on YouTube, and also from once it was stopped at 178, and we'll continue, and it has almost like 290 slokas, and therefore we'll continue from 179 afterwards. First we will do the 58 to 74. So this topic of how the Tarkikas versus the Tarkikas are also called Nayayikas, the Nyaya Vaiseshikas or Indian logicians, how they look at the problem of one becoming into many, how the Visishtadvaitins also looking at how one becoming into many, and so on and so forth. And here the question is, who am I, is a fundamental question, because I am taking myself what I am not as I am. So I'm not interested in about anything else, or you can talk about religion and all other things. Every Jiva is looking for happiness and thinking that happiness is out there, and the more I long for it, I want this, I want this, I want this, and once I get what I want, I still feel I am unhappy because I want more for me to be happy. Now more and more and more. So when is this quest for becoming happy will stop? Only when I have everything. Then there is nothing more for me to want, and everything means it is infinite. If infinite, there is nothing left, and I want infinite. That means I will have infinite. But how can I have infinite? By having a finite things, adding finite things. I can never reach infinity by adding plus finite, and planet is only finite. So I can never solve this problem the way I was trying to solve the problem. That is, trying to get more and more so that I'll become bigger and bigger, because I feel I am inadequate person as I am, because I am identifying with I am this, and this is limited. This is the body, mind and intellect, which are limited by space, limited by time. So I want to solve the limitations by acquiring everything else. That's what rat race is, and I will never become infinity by the way I am going, but I cannot stop trying to become infinity or trying to become happy. Trying to become infinity is same as trying to become completely happy. So you can never solve the problem, and this is going on not only this life, life after life after life. So I cannot solve the problem the way I am trying to solve the problem, and the scripture says you are trying to solve a problem where there is no problem to solve, and that has become a problem. Now you cannot find a solution because there is no problem. So what do you mean I have no problem? I feel I am limited. You are feeling limited because you are identifying with yourself what you are not. You are by nature is infinite. Therefore stop thinking that you are finite and trying to solve a problem. The problem is only not knowing who you are. So that is the fundamental problem, and that's what the scripture is trying to point out as the absolute truth. And there, this is that infinity itself appears to be become many. That's what we have been discussing. But how can infinity become many? Because it's infinity. Infinite cannot become into something else. Infinite remains as infinity. Infinite cannot transform into something finite because it's infinity. Infinite cannot have parts because it's infinity. So therefore This is how can one Brahman Satchidananda, which is infinite, become into many. That's therefore scripture. This is, it's not really becoming many, it appears to become many. Appearance can be different. Just as when I go to dream state, I myself sitting sleeping in the Dunlop bed in an air-conditioned room in a pitch-dark room, because I cannot sleep in the light. So I turned all the light on, made everything dark, and I could sleep. But in the sleep now, I'm dreaming. There I am in the day, bright sunlight in a big forest. So everything is created there. So one mind, my waking mind, is now, when it goes to sleep, is creating the multitudes and multitudes of the rivers and valleys and mountains and trees and people, animals of all kinds I can create. And that is essentially one appearing in many, because that creation is not really real, but it is real enough to experience, but not really real, because when I get up, the tiger that was chasing me was not there, because I am only in the bedroom. No tiger there. So it can appear something pure, one conscious entity can appear into many things. That's what the scripture itself provides an example in the Mandukya Upanishad, talks about the dream world and the deep sleep state and analyzes. And that one becoming many is the nature of the creation. So one appearing many, how is this? This is called Adhyaropa Apavada. The whole theory of Advaita is based on the concept of Vedanta. It appearing many, but the substratum is one. So when I pay attention to the essence of it, ignoring the superficial names and forms, then I recognize that I am the very substratum for the whole universe too. That is how I am infinite, appearing both as a subject and the object. Just as in the dream state, I am the subject who created the whole world. At the same time, I am a Jiva different from other Jiva, different from others, and I have no recognition that I am the one who is dreaming, sleeping in the air-conditioned room, but now I am suffering in the dream state in the hot sun and hungry, running away from the tiger that I myself created, and I made it hungry. Is the tiger going to kill me or not? You decide, because you are the one who creating the tiger and ask it to chase you also. So the dream creation for a dreamer, the dream creation is real. So as long as he is in the dream creation, dreamer doesn't think it is a dream, it is a real. Same way, as long as I am in this state of waking state, I feel the world in the waking world is real, and do not recognize that which pervades the whole world is really real. That's called Adhishtanam. And the one that is appearing many is called the apparent reality. So how do I shift my attention from one to other? That's what the scripture is going to tell, in terms of you are not this, go to next step, you are not that, go to next step, called Adhyaropa Apavada. Take one at a time until you give up everything, recognize you are beyond all these things. That's how the scripture teaches. Here, the question that is being posed is that is Brahman, which is called Kutastha Chaitanyam in this chapter, it's called Kutastha Chaitanyam, that means pure, that the consciousness that doesn't undergo any modification. The anvil is a platform in which either the goldsmith or the ironsmith beats the hot iron into different shapes. It is assuming that the anvil doesn't undergo any deformation in his beating. If the anvil itself deforms, then he cannot really use that anvil for shaping other things. So in order to shape other things, anvil should remain a changeless or non-deformable entity. So this scripture uses that as an example to show that Brahman is like a chainless substratum and on which changing things are occurring. So who is a Jiva? Jiva has to be existing, therefore there is no problem there. Jiva is a conscious entity Unconscious entity we are not referring to. So conscious existent entity is what is the Jiva. How did Brahman appearing as a Jiva? This is where the theory is. So where the Satchidananda is infinite and we have a local mind as though created, and in the mind there is a reflection of the consciousness in the mind, and that's called Chidabhasa. Imagine just like the sun and the moon, so on. The sun is the central light that is pervading everything. Ignoring the source of the sun, let's assume that the sunlight is going all over and it is falling on different objects. So when I say, how do you know there is a sunlight? Because I can see. So what do you see? So I am seeing sunlight. The sun is there outside, it's setting now. So say, how do you know the sun is not there? Sun is there. Because I can see. What can you see? I am not looking at the sun per se. I am looking outside. The sun is very bright. Because what is happening is the sunlight falling on the objects, on the walls and on the earth, getting reflected, and the reflected light is coming to me. Based on the reflected light, I say there is a sunlight. It is the sunlight that is getting reflected. We understand that. We cannot see the original light, we can only see the reflected light. Now apply this to the Brahman, which is of the nature of light of consciousness, which is Chaitanyam, which is consciousness, which illumines everything, and the light, that conscious entity falling on the local mind, it gets reflected because the mind has the capacity to reflect the consciousness. When it reflects the consciousness, the mind appears as a conscious entity, just as the moon and the Mars and all other planets who are not self-luminous entities, because they are inert and they are not self-luminous, but they appear to be luminous entities in the sky, and the moon is so bright, and the brightness or the luminosity of the moon is not intrinsic to that of moon, but it's only reflected consciousness, reflected light or reflected luminosity that is really coming of the sunlight is only reflected into the moon. So now pure Brahman is all pervading, and if there is a transformation, just as transformationless transformation, there are local minds and the bodies and so on. In the local mind, as though consciousness gets reflected, and by the reflecting consciousness, the mind appears to be conscious, just as the moon appearing as a luminous entity in the sky. Same analogy. And therefore, mind and the moon are related. Mind, the moon is a presiding deity of the mind. That's what the scripture talks about. And the mind by reflection becomes a conscious entity. That's called Chidabhasa. So reflected consciousness of the mind. Now mind behaves like a conscious entity, and it says I am a self-conscious entity, just as moon thinking that I am a self-luminous entity, and the consciousness differ from the other guy. It's the same consciousness getting reflected by the other mind, but thinking that is an independent conscious entity, is individual. Each individual think I am different from the all other guys. And in the case of inert materials, the material is not capable of reflecting the consciousness. It only reflects the existence. So that's what we did in the 13, 14, 15 chapters that was we covered, which we finished just now, and we are now only filling up the gaps in the 6th chapter. So consciousness, when it gets reflected, the reflecting media also behaves like a conscious entity. That's called Chidabhasa. Now, is Chidabhasa different from the Kutastha or same? So according to Tarkikas, there is, when I say I am, every individual say I am a conscious entity. Who is claiming that? It's not the pure consciousness, it is the local mind is saying I am a conscious entity. But without knowing the consciousness, that part is coming from the Brahman. It's not a part, but it's only reflected consciousness. It is from the Chidabhasa only Chit has become a conscious entity. Same way, the moon has become a luminous entity. So the question that is, the Tarkika says there is no difference between when I say I am an individual, I am a self, and myself, and I say I myself and my husband, my this, my that. So this is when I say self, we are using in the notion that I am a conscious entity, in localized conscious entity, that's called Chidabhasa. That is what Swayam, he says I am. Who did this? I did this. Who entered? Say when you enter your own house and suddenly the door says, who is that? You say, oh, it's me, I am. So that I am stands for localized conscious entity. A localized conscious entity versus the global pure Satchidananda. So that we call it Kutastham, and this called the Swayam. That is called the individual self. So is individual self different from the total self or not? So if I refer to individual self as a local entity, it's called Chidabhasa. Chidabhasa and the original consciousness, they are different. So Tarkika says they are not different. That's what the topic at this in the up to 56 sloka, where he is referring to the Tarkika arguments, and they say they claim that the I am part in the individual and I am part of the total are the same. And so what we say, Advaitins, and say one is Chidabhasa, when I am says I am an individual, it is a Chidabhasa claiming there that Swa is different from the Kutastha Chaitanyam, and that's what is the Advaita. So how do you say so? I'll give you an example is, if you look at my hand, see, you can see my hand. When you see my hand, what you are really seeing? You are seeing actually the light falling on the hand. Light is illumining the hand. Without the light, you cannot see my hand. If it is pitch dark, even if I put dance and all that, you won't be able to see. So therefore, what you are seeing is only reflected light from my hand. Now, if you pay attention clearly, there are two lights. One is the Kutastha light, that is the original light falling on my hand. Other is the reflected light from my hand. It is the reflected light that really goes, and when you are seeing, it is a reflected light from my hand reaching your retina, forming an image, and is transmitted through neurons and so on, and say, yes, there is a hand. How do you know? It is from the reflected light. So it is called Chidabhasa, reflected light. Original light is called Kutastha or Sakshi. So Kutastha light is different from Chidabhasa light. But you cannot distinguish. When I looking at a hand, you can only see reflected light, but reflection cannot occur without the original light. So original consciousness has to be there, reflected consciousness has to be there as the two entities, and these two entities are indistinguishable, and at the same time you are only seeing one because your eyes cannot see the other. Original cannot see the eye, because if I remove the hand, there is no reflection, the original light which you cannot see. Therefore, to see, I need to reflect the light. So this is very subtle. That's why a subtle mind is required to recognize all this. So Tarkika says there is no difference between the Kutastha Chaitanyam and the Chidabhasa Chaitanyam. That is their statement. When Vedanta says, Vedanta means Advaita Vedanta says, no, they differ. One is the original consciousness, another is a reflected consciousness. One does not undergo any change, whereas the other depends upon the reflecting medium, and the reflecting medium undergoes a change, therefore reflection also occurs. So if it is a hand is growing this way or a hand is open, depending upon the reflecting medium, the reflected light also changes, whereas the original light doesn't change at all, it's the same. So there is a difference between the Kutastha Chaitanyam and Chidabhasa according to Advaita, whereas according to the Tarkikas, there is no difference. So the Vidyaranya says they do not know what they are talking about. That's how the 57th sloka says, Astam dustarkikaihi sakam, Astam dustarkikaihi sakam, Vivada prakritim bruvi, Vivada prakritim bruvi, Swaha moho siddhamekatvam, Swaha moho siddhamekatvam, Kutastha parinamino, Kutastha parinamino. So Astam, so let them say enough whatever they want. Astu, let there be. That's enough. Let there be enough. Prakrutam in the present topic. Bruve, I will speak now. Swa aham. Aham means I am the individual self. That is the Chidabhasa, and aham, the pure Satchidananda. These two words have a different meanings here, word meanings. One stands for Kutastha Chaitanyam, Kutastaha, and the other is the individual self. For them, it is the transformation called Parinama, just as the Visishtadvaita talks about. It is a reversible transformation, same one as though transformed into individual. Whereas we say it's only apparent, and these two are, one is appearing consciousness, one is original consciousness. One is reflected consciousness, Siddhabhasa, and is the original light. Original light and the reflected light are indistinguishable when you are looking at my hand, because the original light is falling and what you are seeing is reflected light. You think what you are seeing is original light is only falling, but it's the reflected light that you are really seeing. That's what it has to be. So the ekatvam, so they think it's not it's a parinamavada. For them it is one, as that's what they think it is. So 58 now. Brahmyante panditam manyaha, Brahmyante panditam manyaha, Sarve laukika tairkikaha, Sarve laukika tairkikaha, Anadrutya srutam maurkhyat, Anadrutya srutim maurkhyat, Kevalam yuktim ashritaha, together, Brahmyante panditam manyaha, Sarvalaukika tairkikaha, Anadrutya srutim maurkhyat, Kevalam yuktim ashritaha. So panditaha manyehe. Here he is pulling their legs here. So panditam manyaha, thinking that they are panditas, they are wise people or intelligent people, and thinking that those who consider themselves they are scholars, here panditaha, sarve laukika tarkikaha, all these worldly people as well as the so-called logicians, nayayikas here, Srutim murkhyat, so avadrutya, so Srutim taking the scriptural statements, murkhyat, in out of foolishness, essentially anadrutya means without proper respecting the scripture, using proper analysis, is saying disrespecting the scriptural statements. They use scriptures when is needed to justify their theory. That's what he is against it. So the Sarkisas also quote your Vedanta also says so. Vedanta says they take selective statements out of context and then use that arguments to justify their theories. That's what here we talk about. Anadrutya, without having a proper the respect for the analysis, and you have to follow a particular methodology, Mimamsa method, in order to analyze the scriptures. Without going all that, they misquote Shrutim murkhyat, due to their murkhatvam, due to their ignorance or Kevalam yuktim ashritaha brahmyante, using only logic of laukika logic, and they get further deluded by their own arguments, and they feel that is right, and they get into to to entangle in that because they have not analyzed the scriptures properly with the proper methodology using the proper teachings. So that is the emphasis here. 59. Purva paraparamarsa Purva paraparamarsa Vikalastatra kechana Vakya bhasan Saswapakshi Yojayasthapya lajjaya together. Purva paraparamarsa Vikalastatra kechana Vakya bhasan Saswapakshi Yojayasthapya lajjaya. So Tatra kechana. So some of these people, some of the arrogant people or so-called the wise people, Purva paramarsha Vikalaha. So Vikalaha is not having clearly Purva apara. So what is before, what it was said, what's there in the later, how do we have a consistent systematic explanation of this statement, taking into account what was said before and taking into consideration what's going to be said later, and how is coherency called Tattva Samanvayat. So self-consistency has to be maintained. Therefore, scripture has to be properly interpreted so that there is no inconsistencies in the scriptures. And therefore, that is essentially here is referring to Purva Paramarsha. Paramarsha. So what was said before, what was said later, how this can be consistently explained. So Vikalaha, so not having that knowledge at all, Swaswapakshe, in order to justify their own theories. So theories have been put forward and justification is taken depending upon how they can justify using some scriptural statements here and there to satisfy their position here. Swaswapakshe, so their own interpretations. So Vakya Abhasa, so that is what essentially as though correct interpretation. So Alajjata Yojayanti api, they apply without any shame, they apply these scriptural statements here and there, and to justify their own swapaksha, their own theories have been proved to be right by selectively applying the scriptural statements here and there without inquiring what was said in those scriptural statement, how is the total coherency of the scriptural statement in total, and what is the essence of meaning of those statements that considers everything else. Without understanding all that, they just use it for their own stupidity to justify their own theories. We find that even in science also. Look at 60. Kutastadi sariranta Sanghatasyaatmatam jaguhu Lokayataha pamarascha Pratyakshabhasamasritaha. So Kutastadi, Lokayataha, these materialistic people, here we are talking about Charvaka philosophers here. So he leaves the Sarkikas here. Now he is taking the materialistic, that is applied even today's materialistic people also, who do not care and don't believe in the life after, and this is the only life, and that's what Charvaka philosophy is. So Lokayataha, the materialists, Pamaraha, those who have do not have a clear understanding of it. Pratyaksha Abhasam, the authority of the seers is perception, seeing perceptions. So see the authority of I am seeing this, therefore it is real. So whatever I see, because this is a direct, immediately available as a pratyaksha pramana. So based on that, ashritaha, taking them as real, kutastha, from the Kutastha Sarirantaha, that is up to the body level, is Sandhatasya, of congregate combination, Atmatam. So the Kutastha Chaitanya is nothing but this body all the way from the top to bottom, because that is the individual. Who am I? I am this body. Why? Because it formed from the totality, and this is the Kutastha Chaitanya, and I am conscious entity, and this is I am this. So this is what the Charvaka philosophy, materialistic philosopher, believe in that, and we'll go into more details of these different philosophies that Vidyaranya takes up to knock it out, how Advaita Vedanta is more critical and follow this scriptural statement. With this we stop here. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vasishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om. Sri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om.